So the first thing that I do before I even open up Photoshop is I have the photos that I've selected and the photos that I want. I have them maybe in a separate folder or something like that. The first thing that I do is I never work with the original photo. And the reason being is something can go wrong and the card can get, anyway, there's so many multiple things that could go wrong. You know, obviously you don't want them to. So what I do is over here is I right click it or I control click on the Mac. I'm going to do this over here. And you can duplicate it. You always want to duplicate that photo. And then what you want to do is you want to, I always hit Control, Open With, and then Photoshop. Okay, so this is kind of maybe a video representation for you guys when you guys start editing photos. What we've done is open up Photoshop, and I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Photoshop. If you're familiar with it, you can just kind of scroll forward until we start moving. But Photoshop is pretty much the industry standard when it comes to working with photos. So just a couple things that we're going to work with here. If you notice here on the screen, this over here is your toolbar, and we'll be referring to that a lot. Obviously, here's your photo. This panel right here are the levels and the layers of your photos and all the effects that you can do. This right in here is what we'll be using for adjustments, because we're going to adjust the levels and the brightness and the contrast and whatnot. And then this right here, this right button right here is your history. And I'll show you how that comes into play later on, but you can go back and when you do edit undo on most things, that's basically the best edit undo in the world. So anyhow, this is a photo, obviously of Creighton Prep, and they're playing Bellevue West. We submitted this photo for a competition, but we didn't submit the entire thing. What we did is my photographer had to edit it. The first thing I do is I want to see, okay, well, what part of the photo do I want to use? Because here's what I don't need these guys over here on the left. I don't need the ref. He's not crucial. I don't need this lineman coming in. So what I do is obviously the point of action is right here. Now, the decision to make is where you crop. So what I do is I come over here, and if you hover over the button long enough, you're going to see kind of a little cheat sheet. So I'm going to click crop. And if you notice, now everything is ready for crop. And it's just like how you crop photos in iPhoto. But I'm going to bring this in a little bit. I'm going to bring this up. And I want to be careful that I don't cut off feet. I don't cut off heads. And I'm happy with that because my rule of thirds tells me that this guy right here is going to be my rule of thirds. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to hit the return key and notice how it went from my screen. It went from just a regular the tic-tac-toe board to this. Now what I want to do is I want to go over here and I want to adjust the levels. Now normally we would say, okay, we'll just click on brightness and brighten it up and it's all good. But there's a little bit more fine-tuning to that. I'm going to bring that back down to 0. There's a little bit more fine-tuning to that. So what I'd like to do is work on the levels. And these are the white levels and the black levels. So if you notice right here, here's your option right here, is you can move these little triangles in a little bit. And you can bring this in a little bit. And you can kind of see how it's brightened up a little bit. So I'm going to do that again to show you here. I'm not crazy about that. I might bring, that's a little too dark. I need it to be, so I'm going to bring this up. So it's kind of just a matter of playing with it. You don't want to get too artistic or anything like that. Not in a photojournalistic, in a photo like this. Then I go over here and I mess with curves. And you'll see the curves here. Now what I can do is I can bring this up. I kind of want to see a little bit more of the field. I'm going to edit undo. You can kind of see where it's a little bit dark. I'm going to bring this up here and bend the curve a little bit so I can see a little bit more of the field. And I'm pretty okay with that. The next thing I look at, and the next thing, and this is also in your tutorial here, is another thing you can look at is dodging and burning. And dodging and burning is essentially, well, let me show you the button here. So if, and this looks like a little lollipop here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my dodge tool. Dodge tool brightens things up specifically on specific points. And then burn does the exact opposite. So if I click on this, if I click and hold on this, I have dodge, burn, and sponge. I'm going to dodge it. Okay. I'm also, if you notice over here, I'm going to click this. I'm going to click on my zoom tool. And I'm going to zoom into the area that I want. I kind of want to see this guy's jersey. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go back to my dodge tool. And if I press and I just click and I drag, you don't want to brighten it up too much because you don't want it to ruin the integrity of the photo. So now what I want to do is I want to come over here. I want to click on background because I don't want to mess with the curves and the levels. This is the levels. So I want to go back to background. And now I want to dodge it. And it's getting a little brighter. Not a whole lot brighter. You don't want it a whole lot brighter. You can mess with the exposure. You can mess with, I want to click over here and do shadows. Right? So now it's getting darker. Now it's getting brighter, excuse me. And then you can kind of see that in there. And you don't want to do it too much. You don't want it to be, you want it to look natural, like it's an actual shadow. And that might be a little too much, like of a hot spot there. So then what I do is I go over here and I click on this. This is my history of all the things I've done on this project. So dodge, 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 dodge. I'm going to go back here and all I did was just click on it. And now I can keep working again. I can go back. It's like the edit undo on steroids. So I can just kind of go like this and kind of work on this. And of course I can change the width of my tool, the width of my dodge tool, and just bring that stuff in. So you can brighten this stuff up, and obviously the more fine-tuned you get and the more you zoom in, I'm going to go back to dodge. You know, you can get in here and you can start dodging things. But you can kind of brighten that up a little bit. And I'll just do a little, it's not a great job, but it'll do the job for what we're doing here. But that's what you're doing. You're constantly editing. Remember that video that we saw of the guy from Husker Illustrated? Is that he said his real work starts when he gets in. He starts working on editing on photos. That's exactly what he's doing. He's editing photos. Notice on this photo that Jeff took, he did a good job. This is not a great dodge job, but I'm just kind of getting for the effect here. It's really, really grainy here, right? So his ISO had to have been up like a lot. So now I go over here and I'm like, okay, well, that's good. Now maybe I kind of dodge this a little bit and do that. And obviously if you do the opposite, I'm just going to, just so you can see it, if I burn it, it's going to darken up, maybe not that much, maybe not the midtones, maybe I go to the highlights and I can darken up his jersey if I want to. And sometimes it's, and then you can change the brush and whatnot. You know, you can change that. You can make an oval and stuff like that. So that's basically the basic edits, okay? To shift back, I hit this, I hit Option, and I just zoom back out. This is not an acceptable photo. This is not an acceptable photo. Oops. Just because it's kind of garbage over here. But I just wanted to show you just for that. When you're done and you're finished with this, you want to do a file. You want to do a file, save as. And the important thing is you don't want to save it as a Photoshop file right here. You want to save it and save it as a JPEG. And then you want to put that in your computer. So that is the basics of editing. Cropping, working with the levels, and then dodging and burning.